What, like Happy Valentine's Day if you're into commercialised shite, materialism, and wasting money on overly expensive cards. You know, first Valentine's Day, I will say, a couple of years of being single, it's a bit shit. I'd rather be doing something other than what I'm doing right now. But hey ho. That said, came across something else that I seemingly missed because this was a report, which I'll just put up on the screen right now, from like mid-December. So sort of self-explanatory why I probably missed that. That said, I need to go back up to the top because I was having a wee skim through it. Here we are. Racism, belonging, and COVID's legacy of ethnic inequalities in Scotland. Report of the evidence for Equality National Survey. Right. So I'm just gonna go through a wee bit of this because this stuff really fucking annoys me for obvious reasons. But here we are. Racism, belonging, COVID's legacy. Right. Don't know why I'm a laptop sort of struggling all of a sudden because it was fine just before I started to record this. So I hope, anyway, that the recording itself doesn't spurg out in terms of my audio. I'm going to zoom out a bit though. This is why I hate PDFs sometimes. They don't really work properly. Anyway, here we go. So we come to the first little bit here, right? So the centre on the dynamic refer to Scottish people as, oh, we're just white Scottish, but then when they talk about every other group of people, they continuously refer to them as, ethnic minorities, ethnic this, ethnic that. We're not an ethnicity, but everybody else is apparently. But regardless, they're very pleased to be collaborating with BEMIS, which is Black and Ethnic Minorities in Scotland, on this report, which explores the experiences of Equality National Survey, funded by the Economic and Social Research Council, has produced an unrivaled data set documenting the lives of ethnic and religious minority people in Britain during the coof. They've even used cutting edge and a unique large sample of ethnic minority groups with recognition. We also recovered a wide range of topics to ensure in-depth coverage of ethnic minority experience, including education, employment, economic well-being, housing and neighbourhood, social and political participation. Oh, I bet they did. I bet they fucking did. Bet this isn't biased in the slightest. I wonder. Then you get a wee bit about BEMIS here, where they say that BEMIS Scotland complement the positive collaboration with the Evans or Evidence for Equality National Survey team and the publication of this report that reflects upon the experiences of Scotland's ethnic minority communities in the pandemic era. Undoubtedly, the pandemic brought about various challenges that impacted the progression of race equality in Scotland at several levels, such as the social, economic, and health impacts of the pandemic that have transitioned into the cost of living crisis, quote unquote, impacts of exiting the European Union, and an increase in anti-immigration rhetoric, which didn't just come out of nowhere, didn't appear in a vacuum. But don't let that fucking stop you. You devious, bias, redacted. Anyway, so introduction. I love this. So it goes. Scotland's population is becoming more ethnically diverse. So we're just going to transition slightly back to the previous comment or paragraph that I read out, where they make reference to anti-immigration rhetorics on the increase. Why would that be? Or maybe it's because Scotland's population is becoming more ethnically diverse, despite the fact people in the country shouldn't be, ain't, and wouldn't be happy about it. By and large, why the fuck would they want that? Why would they want that? Okay, it frustrates the fuck out of me. They tell you these things so matter of factly. They word it all the time, whether it's the media, whether it's activists such as this, and obviously they're going to have a bias slant in particular, or whether it's politicians. They tell you all the time, "Oh, we're becoming more ethnically diverse." Well, then it stands to reason that there's going to become some form of backlash in some capacity. Okay, like that. This annoys me. Why would anyone be happy with this? It makes no sense to me why anybody would push back against the pushback against becoming more ethnically diverse, unless you've got some sort of political brainlet head on you. But regardless, today, 13% of the population identify with an ethnic group other than white Scottish or white British. But even this terminology, okay, like it's not white Scottish. You're Scottish or you're not. Okay, we're an ethnic fucking group. But regardless, don't let that stop you. But yeah, today, 13% of the population British, an increase of 8% from the beginning of the 20th century. The nation is richer in multiple ways from this diversity. Yet it is also evident that inequalities between ethnic groups are stark and persistent. Public Health Scotland has recognised the particular adverse experiences of ethnic minorities as a result of the coof and has called for better data and evidence to understand and address the Scottish Rainbow Unicorn Government's research, which has detailed how people from non-white ethnic minority groups are more likely to be in relative poverty than white British, other groups with over half of Asian and black groups in Scotland living in poverty. That's a lot of words to take in there. But like, I'm pretty sure like a couple of like the highest earners all across the UK, because Theresa May was doing this a couple of years ago. Well, when she was in power, remember the ethnicity pay gap that Theresa May was talking about introducing, and they were trying to use the exact same identical format that they had previously used with the gender pay gap, and even with their own data / research, they concluded like Bangladeshis and I think maybe Chinese, I could be wrong there, but I think it was Bangladeshis were actually earning more than the legitimate indigenous people of this fucking island. But no, don't let that stop you. The Scottish Government, alongside other organisations, has an explicit commitment to race equality and anti-racism that is articulated in the Race Equality Framework 2016 to 2030, which BMIS was directly involved with creating. The aim is for a fairer Scotland, where people are healthier, happier, and treated with respect, and where opportunities, wealth, and power are spread more equally. But even this, I mean, you hear it all the time. Power, this bullshit about power being spread more equally. Okay, and everyone's got it's a fairer Scotland, right? We're not talking about equality, we're talking about equity here. But when you start to like dig deep down, right, really dig deep down into what they're actually speaking about when they refer to racism, this is why I call into question so much of this shit. But anyway, I don't want to ramble too much more than I already have up until this point. So let's get into this slightly. It is known that the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic were unevenly felt across population groups in part of the country, with ethnic minority groups being up to 88% more likely than white British majority to contract the virus. Ethnic minority groups were at a higher risk of experiencing deaths. Furthermore, these differential impacts have long-term effects, not least because they compound existing inequalities and there are inadequate support schemes for ethnic minority communities. You know, and not taking into consideration, of course, living standards, the amount of people that live in these people's homes, their eating habits, their diets, etc. Like the BBC back in the day debunked this bullshit indirectly, and I do recall making videos on it, but forgive me because I've not really rehashed my memory on said topic. But regardless, they want you to just because of like systemic oppression. Like, fuck off, man. Like, fuck off. Experiences of racism. We're such a racist country, yeah. Yeah, but they still want you to come here, of course. But we're racist. The data set allows unique insights into experiences of racism across ethnic groups. Oh, what was the other one? It was vitamin D deficiency. That was another one. Sorry, yeah, it just sprung my like vitamin D deficiency, etc. Like played a massive contribution to why a lot of like black people in particular ended up in fucking hospital and whatnot. But anyway, experiences of racism across ethnic groups at a national level by providing a range of indicators of experiences of racism. Define racism. I'd love for them to define racism properly. And detailed ethnic group categories. Over 80% of ethnic minorities suffer from some form of racism during their lives. Racism is a commonplace experience of ethnic minorities in Britain. And I'm sure it could arguably be said that racism is clearly, a commonplace experience for ethnic Scots or white people, whatever you want to fucking call them. Okay? Like, this is not one-sided. This bullshit, this narrative, this argument that never seems to die. If nothing else, it seems to continuously permeate across every facet of our country, is that white people are inherently the problem. Not all white people, of course. Some are allies and some are colorblind, but there is plenty of other whites that are really mean and nasty, and poor little brown babes are always the victim. They can never be the perpetrator. And it also doesn't take into consideration, maybe, for example, and I'm just plucking a couple of hypotheticals out of thin air, Chinese people in the country who might dislike Japanese people. It's not taking into consideration blacks who hate Africans. No, blacks who hate Pakistanis or Afghanis who hate Indians. No. It's always the white man. It's always whitey. Okay? It's a very, very, very vague fucking term at this point, which is racism. So anyway, Figure 3, or whatever, I'll see down there, gives an overview of the prevalence of experience of racism in the last 5 years across a number of dimensions for people living in Scotland who identify as ethnic minorities. We can think of insult, racism experiences in public, racism from friends, families, or neighbours, physical attack or property damage as personal racism, and racism at work, education, housing, and from police as an institution. Okay, that's a lot to take in there. In the last 5 years, around a quarter of ethnic minorities in Scotland experienced racist insults or another form of racism expressed in public. Around 1 in 6 ethnic minorities in Scotland experienced unfair treatment in their job in the last 5 years because of their ethnicity, race, colour, or religion. Which, I mean, even this, how can they prove this? Okay, the problem that we are living under at this point is that anything that goes wrong, anything at all that goes wrong in somebody who's classified as an ethnic minority, anything that goes wrong, it's because of racism. Don't get the job it's because I'm black. It's like, it's the old meme, isn't it? Must be because you're brown. It must be because your name's Tyrone and you're from Nigeria. It can't be anything else. Maybe you just weren't good enough. Fucking screw your meritocracy. No. It's because of racism. Has to be. Okay. And again, this comes down to perception. Okay. A lot of this is perception. It's what these people perceive to be out of racism. And this is enough to substantiate bogus, crappy little reports such as this. 10% also reported deliberate damage to their property and physical attack in the past few years for reasons to do with their ethnicity, race, color, or religion. I mean, is this just what you think? Or is this stuff that legitimately occurred due to what you claim and why it occurred? So obviously you've got some graphs here and whatnot. Feel free to pause them. I'm not going to go through the entirety of that, but I'll just read this bit right here. Participants were asked how they responded to experiences of racism. A minority, 21% of ethnic minorities in Scotland with recent experience of racism, define it, tried to do something about it. 43% of ethnic minorities in Scotland with recent experience of racism reported that they accepted racism as a fact of life. Levels of acceptance of racism are particularly high for mixed black ethnic groups. And I wonder who's directing a lot of that racism towards them. Probably black people and whatnot. It's like, for fuck's sake, like, All right, what's this? So anyway, not only do significant proportions of ethnic minorities in Scotland experience racism, but it's also clear that for large proportions of ethnic groups, worrying about racial harassment is a part of daily life. Overall, 38% of ethnic minorities in Scotland reported worrying about racial harassment. It's also clear that the degree to which this worry exists considerably across ethnic groups and between Scotland and the rest of Britain. In Scotland, the highest levels of worry about racial harassment are found for other blacks, Pakistanis, other Asians, white and black, Indian, black Caribbean, black African, Jewish, and for other white, such as white Irish, white and black African, other black, other Asian, Pakistani, and Indian, levels of worry about racial harassment are higher for those living in Scotland. I mean, what a fucking bit of a tongue twister. Fucking Jesus, man. The survey clearly demonstrates that ethnic identity matters to people. Figure 8 shows that 60% of people living in Britain consider their ethnic background to be important to their sense of who they are. This proportion is lowest for white British. That's interesting. The proportion is lowest for white British, Eastern European, and other white ethnicities, and above 75%. Even this white, other white ethnicities. Why are Scottish people not considered an ethnicity? By the way, I'm getting sick of this. We're not. Oh, we're white Scottish. No, we're not. We're Scottish. Okay, I'm sorry, but anyway, the proportion is lowest for white British, Eastern European, and white ethnicities, and above 70% for Chinese, Indian, Pakistani, and all black groups. Any other ethnic group. Sorry. Generally, the proportion indicated that ethnic background is important to their identity and is similar across Scotland and England and Wales. For the Arab, other white, and particularly the Bangladeshi group, the proportions express the importance of ethnic background for their identity is lower in Scotland than in Wales and England. Okay. So there's that. More graphs. More graphs. Oh, lots of graphs. It's lovely. Lovely political trust, for fuck's sake. Oh, I mean, Jesus Christ, that's not exactly a racist issue, is it? Here's our summary of findings, okay? This report has presented new data from the Evidence for Equality National Survey to document ethnic inequalities and experience of ethnic minorities in Scotland in terms of the COVID-19, coof, bereavement, racism, ethnic and national belonging. The coof has exacerbated ethnic inequalities in Scotland. For some ethnic groups, a half to a third experience recent bereavement, including as a result of the coof, which is likely to have long-lasting effects in multiple areas of life. 1 in 4 ethnic minorities experience recent racist insults. 1 in 6 ethnic minorities in Scotland experience recent unfair treatment in their job. 10% of ethnic minorities in Scotland have suffered recent racist physical attacks. Black and Chinese ethnic groups in Scotland have particularly high levels of reporting racist insults and unfair treatment from the police. Generally, levels of reported racism experienced are comparable across ethnic groups in Scotland, England, and Wales. There is some evidence that Chinese, Black Caribbean, and other black groups experience higher levels of racism compared with England and Wales. More than 1/3 of ethnic minorities in Scotland worry about racial harassment, or racist harassment even. The majority of people identifying as BAME or Jewish in Scotland worry about racial harassment. Levels of worry about racism are higher in Scotland than that in England and Wales for many ethnic groups. 1 in 5 ethnic minority people in Scotland who experience racism try to do something about it. 40% accept racism as a fact of life. 60% of people in Scotland consider their ethnic background to be important to their sense of who they are. Lower proportions of Jewish people in Scotland compared to in England and Wales report religion is important to their sense of self or their sense of who they are. Even for white British and Scottish or white Irish people in Scotland, considerably higher proportions feel they belong to Scottish society compared to belonging to British society. And over 75% of most non-white ethnic minority groups in Scotland feel part of both British and Scottish society. Okay. Lovely. Lovely stuff. Let me see though. Where's education? I want to see that. I thought there'd be a bit more on that. Doesn't really elaborate too much, does it? Apart from as their conclusion. BEMIS is the ethnic minority-led umbrella body supporting the development of the ethnic minorities voluntary sector as a strategic national infrastructure. It aims to empower the diverse ethnic minority third sector. They're committed to promoting inclusion, democratic active citizenship, and recognition of diversity, human rights, education, and wider representation, as well as affecting a proactive role in maintaining and enhancing pathways to influence government policy in regard to equality and human rights. It's local Scottish UK and EU levels. Right. So anyway, I think it really does need to be stressed here, though. Just before I conclude this, if I can get the fuck off this tab, that'd be nice. What needs to be stressed, to be honest, is again, like, define racism. Define racism. Everything is racist because BMIS are no different. They're no different to the Building Racial Literacy Program. They're no different to any other organization and whatnot, or any other group of activists who sort of frame everything through a critical race theorist lens, for lack of better terminology. Okay, everyone's racist. It's not my fault. It's nobody else's fault if somebody feels that they don't belong in this country. Okay, we're forever being berated. We're ever being reminded. We are forever being told that Indigenous people exist in this world, but yet when it comes to countries such as Scotland, Indigenous people is a misnomer. It's a myth. It's non-existent. It's bullshit. Okay? Anybody can come to Scotland and be Scottish. Okay, if somebody comes to this country and feels a semblance of, or a lack of identity, a semblance of feeling like the other, maybe that's because they kind of are. Has that thought ever crossed your mind? No, it doesn't. Because we're still the bad guy. We're still the bad guy. Okay? You dump a fucking Labrador into a pen with a bunch of cats. Guess what? The Labrador doesn't all of a sudden become a cat. No. The Labrador knows he's different to the cats. You know what I mean? I mean, it's pretty simple. Okay? We should be focusing on our own country and our own people, but we can't even acknowledge that we are a people, and that's a problem in and of itself. And instead, we have to continuously not only open the metaphorical floodgates to embrace every culture, color, and creed to come into this country, we can't even acknowledge that we are in and of itself a people. We have to bury our own culture, and we have to bullshit and lie and propagandize our youth, etc., into believing that we've always been a diverse nation. Yeah, and then they also tell you, oh, we're becoming more ethnically diverse. Oh, we are becoming. So that suggests there was a point in time where we weren't ethnically diverse, but then they simultaneously then cry and whine about a rise in anti-immigration rhetoric. Why would that be? Oh, maybe it's because you've just fucking told us that there's a rise in ethnic diversity. Okay? That isn't to justify being crass, grotesque, horrible, or doing anything to somebody because of the color of their skin. I'm not about that at all, right? But it's not reciprocal, okay? It's really not fucking reciprocal, because I don't hear these activists saying the same shit. You shouldn't be berating white people all the time. But every single time a report like that comes out, all it ever seems to be geared towards is shitting on white people in some capacity, whether indirectly or indeed in many instances directly. Okay? So there is that to take into consideration. But hey ho, what a fucking shock. Rainbow Unicorn Land, formerly known as Pickland, formerly known as Albaland, formerly known as Scotland. And now we're just a bunch of racists. What a shock. Yes, what a shock.
What are the plans